Hey folks, Mike from LI Flies Mike here, and today we're going to be tying a variation on a classic fly. This is a Mikelson pattern, a very well-known Long Island fly tyer, and as always, the full list of materials will be down in the description below. We're going to get started by tying off the tail here. Now this is essentially a take on the classic Deceiver. We're going to be tying it in a much more slimmed down version. Traditionally I'd be using the American rooster hackle from whiting, but unfortunately it's almost unavailable everywhere nowadays, so I'm going to be using some flat wing hackle here and taking some of the skinnier hackle just so we can have a nice thin tail off this fly. Using a little bit of bucktail as support here because the American whiting rooster I used to use was much stiffer, so this is a much softer hackle, so I want to have a little bit of support so the tail doesn't foul on us. So taking the feathers and stripping a little bit of the excess off so we don't end up with too much bulk on the hook shank. We're going to be tying these feathers curve in towards each other. And this is important because it helps ensure that the feathers don't foul, but it also will help create a nice profile for the fly. So tying 2 feathers on each side, I usually like to start by tying 1 on either side, getting my length figured out, and then I'll go ahead and tie another layer on each side. So in the end, we're going to have 4 feathers with the curve in facing each other. And you can see here, I usually tie my feathers up towards the hook eye, leaving myself a gap, so when we wrap our bill's body braid, we're going to have a nice even body to the fly. Taking some Kyrstal Flash, I'm going to fold this in half and cut it so we don't end up with any waste. And then I'm going to just loop this and tie this on right back to the feathers. So now taking some flat diamond braid or some Bill's body braid, we're going to go ahead and just wrap our body braid forward, applying a little bit of super glue first to ensure that it's durable. And then we're just going to slowly wrap the body braid forward towards the hook eye, leaving a little gap towards the front so we can tie in our bucktail. So being that this is the Slim Deceiver by Mikelson, we're going to keep this fly nice and sparse. Essentially like if we were tying a flat wing as opposed to a traditional Deceiver. We're scaling down the amount of material that we use here so we can try and imitate these smaller baitfish that we find in the back bays. So a very small amount of white bucktail here, and I'm just going to tie this in to where it extends about 2/3 of the way back so we have a nice profile to the fly. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this pink bucktail, and for this color up top here, I'm just going to have this extend slightly further back than the white, so we just have a nice taper to the color on the fly. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some lavender after this, so I'm using a small amount of pink and just spreading it to the sides to essentially, we'll have some pink on the cheeks of the fly. So now taking some of this nice lavender bucktail here, I'm going to tie some of this on top. Again, trying to keep the bucktail to a minimum because we already tied some pink on top. We're going to use a little bit less than we would if we were tying just the white on the belly. You can feel free to use whatever sort of colors you like. As always with saltwater flies, I always recommend using whatever colors you feel confident in. Using light colors for days that are lighter, maybe sunny, bright, and using darker flies for either at night or when it's cloudy and dark out. So now we're going to go ahead and throw a couple whip finishes on here, and then we can put our eyes on the fly. Using some adhesive stick-on eyes from saltwaterflies.com, we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of super glue and then put these eyes on here, and then we could start building the UV resin head. A little bit of super glue before you put on the adhesive eyes can make a big difference when you apply the UV resin head. These eyes are pretty high quality, but if you use some eyes that maybe don't have a good adhesive backing, what'll happen is when you start applying the UV resin and working it, the eyes can move on you. So this is just a habit from my commercial tying that I use a little bit of super glue. So now taking some medium UV resin, I'm just applying a very small amount here to cover the eyes and the thread. We're going to use our bodkin here to work the UV resin and fully cover those eyes, ensuring that the head is going to be durable. But we don't need much resin here. This is a pretty small fly. So just taking my bodkin and working that resin back behind the eyes, ensuring that the eyes are fully covered. You want to be careful though, you don't want that resin to go too far back into the bucktail. And I'm going to work it forward towards the thread as well, making sure that I cover every bit of thread with some UV resin. If you want to make sure that your profile is correct, because there is a little bit of UV resin in that bucktail, then you can hold the fly where you like it and then hit it with the light. We're just going to slowly rotate our UV light here, ensuring that the head has a nice cure. And now you can see, because this is a slim deceiver, we tied it nice and sparse, you can see my scissors through the material. This is very important. We're trying to imitate translucent bait fish. So this fly on a sunny day on the flats will have a very realistic look to it in the water compared to a more traditional bulky deceiver. There you go, that's the Slim Deceiver by Glenn Mikelson. A very well-known Long Island fly tyer from my area, and I've had the honor of fishing next to him a couple times. We've covered some of his other flies in the past, like the Mikelson's epoxy baitfish, which is a classic albie fly here on Long Island. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mike here from LI Flies Mike. We have new fly tying videos coming out every week, as well as live fly tying on Fridays, and early access for members. Well, until next time, good luck out there this season, and we'll see you on the next video. Tight lines.